I respond to the things off of the off-ramps and gas stations and hotels and places that I stay at, even airports, spending a lot of time there. So naturally, I respond to the American landscape. Well, we were going down for Art Basel, and she said, "Are you interested in having a show?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do this show." And while I was in that few weeks, in that 1 week, I photographed most of the work in the show. In North Florida, because North Florida is amazing because it's an exodus for people who are on the panhandle from hurricanes, but it's also a destination from all the people up north to stop at these amazing gas station stuff on the way down to Orlando and Miami. So North Florida is a really forgotten about community as far as it still looks like 1960 there. But I don't choose it because it's nostalgic. Actually, I choose it for its compositional elements. I mean, it's a naked landscape with no hills, and it's gorgeous. It's just hard lines and synthetic illumination, which really drives me, is the synthetic light. So
you took photographs while you were...
I did.
Yeah.
I took a lot of pictures there. I mean, I can remember when Erin, we were at a gas station. She's like, "We had to go over there." I was like, "I'm photographing this gas station." So it was this amazing gas station. I think it was run by Hasidic Jews or something. It had no signs on it. It was like a Texaco, but it was all paint. The building was painted beige. The gas pumps were painted beige. Everything was beige. It was incredible. It was like everything was like taupe, like beige taupe color. And it was like nothing I'd ever seen. No, but it was like I had to photograph it. I couldn't figure out how to deal with it in a painting because it looked like a plastic model before you painted it. And I was like, wow. But I was like, no one is going to understand this. So
then you take photographs, and then what happens? When you come back to your studio?
Well, I had all these images in my head, and then I found them and photographed them. And then this was the first painting I started for the show, this large one right here. And obviously you and I have a great relationship. We riff on each other, and I had these like 4 or 5 images, and I was really wanted to be challenged. And sometimes the best time to be challenged is not to choose your own template. And I allowed you to help me with that, because I ended up painting all the works that I had in these images. But I said, I need you to pick something for this giant painting, because normally, in a large painting, you make the commitment to it. Usually the template you choose is one you've already assumed. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this painting for me is a huge departure. I mean, it's cinematic in many ways, but it also was a huge challenge for me because it's the size of my studio. I mean, my studio is as big as that painting. So
when you showed it to me, you had a series of images,
yeah.
And I saw that one, I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
I selfishly wanted to see that large scale,
But the thing is, in this, when I chose it, this was the only thing that existed in the photograph that I had was literally this yellow and this overhang, and even this pump was very different. There's multiple pumps, and everything else comes from how I wish the world looked. So I add all the things, and I change things around, and I shift the composition so that it works, and I replicate the patterns up here, down in here, and I obviously further the imagination. So I break away from the photo almost immediately. The photograph is literally just a starting point for me. So and that's the thing we're talking with Cudlin. He comes over and he was getting me all juiced up when we were talking about that overhang. He noticed how I shifted the perspective on it to make it more awkward, so our consciousness goes underneath it. So.
And Blake Gopnik from the Post also spent a lot of time on that overhang, staring at the geometric shape of it and kind of the breakdown. And he stood there probably for about 25 minutes by himself, just staring at it. So it had a lot.
That overhang. There's a thing that I love in painting, and it's Matissean, and it also refers to Diebenkorn, but it's the blending of awkwardness and elegance. It's like you can't. The most attractive qualities of people is when those two things come together. Something's out of place, but it looks so natural. And I've always tried to find that in my work, either skewing things or painting out things that I already have faith in, and being like, oh, I can do that again. If I did it this well, let's try it again. And that's a big part of how I draw, and destroying the things that come too naturally to me.
So you jokingly refer to yourself sometimes as an outmoded painter.
Yeah.
And what's that about? You have.
Well, I'm slightly combative. with the rest of the art world. And not to say that I discount it. Actually, I'm hugely influenced by cinema and photography. But I like to be in a quiet battle with other ideas that people are putting forth. And so, in the same way that I was talking about with Isabella, how I coined herself the Outmoded Painter Society, she was already a member of the group before she had said she wanted to be a member of the Outmoded Painter Society of Washington, D.C., which is just a tongue-in-cheek thing. But, I mean, obviously, I'm responding to the glut of graffiti and irony and the hipsterism and all the things that make superficial issues and images, too. I mean, I really try to have excellence in my process as much as I do in the imagery, but for every 30 paintings I do, I maybe only will produce 15 that I would ever show or even share with anybody. So I'm throwing my works out all the time because I'm looking for that depth in my work that that doesn't come through superficial images, which is the cup is filled right now with pop imagery that is already entered into the lexicon and the visual vernacular that is already popular, and so I'm just, you know. And
what do you think about Jeffrey Cudlin's statement, Trevor Young is quintessentially an American painter?
I don't look at it all as a negative. I mean, it was when we were talking about it, and you helped me pare it down even more, but I mean, I grew up here in Washington, D.C. I mean, the Jeffry has the largest collection of Whistler paintings in the world, and I love George Bellows, and I love Rothko, and I love Diebenkorn, and Matisse is probably the one odd card for me, but I like Ed Ruscha. I like these artists. They make American images, and I didn't say I'm an American painter. You know what I'm saying? But you have access to real works because I didn't grow up looking. I mean, I looked at art books, but I really grew up looking at the original works and being very jealous of George Bellows. Like the ones at the National Gallery, the bridge, the overpass with the orange, it's like a middle cool, warm gray. It's like the gradients in it, and then it's like sloughed in with a palette knife, and I was so jealous of that painting in high school. And I was like, I'm gonna do that shit, man. And I was so inspired by it. And like the Bellows Shark, Night at Sharky's, or both members belong to the club painting, the boxers. I mean, the richness of the darks, the composition, the diagonals. I mean, it's classically structured, but it's so explosive and drawn. And so American painters broke away from the beauty of European painting in a way that, I mean, it just happens so intensely. And I think so, when then you get to pop, you get pop, it changes, but before that, abstract expressionism with like Rothko and, a few other painters in that group, they constructed with a deeper philosophy than just imagery. They use paint in a way that I really respect. So.
Well, like when we were talking about sort of American painting versus French or European painting, I was talking about oil paint always has all of these sort of possibilities for sort of seductive expression and sort of these beautiful things that you can make happen, and that to a certain extent, like the sort of if there's sort of an American approach to if you go to Hopper and it's like there's all these things he could be doing that are just aren't even he's not even interested in.
Yeah.
He's mostly interested in edges and planes and a certain sort of relation to space and blocking in the color, and sometimes this way that comes across as scruffy and kind of elegant. And I feel like there's these beautifully composed pictures where there's all of these things that you could get swept up in and carried away by that you just sort of tamp down and sort of focus on a few key issues in terms of relation to space, constructing the space that's sort of partly sort of anecdotal and partly created, and it just, to me, that seems American. That's what I
agree. I agree. I mean, I think the Ashcan School is a huge influence on me, and even though Bellows wasn't truly Ashcan, he has a huge footprint on my